Mr. Iyengar said to us once that yoga is when every cell of the body sings the song of the soul, which is really nice. But what I see as a molecular biologist was that every cell has its own consciousness, and what we experience as our individual consciousness is that it's actually a group consciousness. It's like a swarm of bees or a swarm of birds or a school of fish all working together as one. And so perfect health in our own bodies is when every cell of our body treats every other cell of the body the same way a mother treats a child who she knows she's connected with.
Well, hello, and how are you today? And welcome back. Welcome to another episode of the Finding Equilibrium Show. And today my guest is Simon Borg-Olivier, and I'm really delighted that you've made some time to speak with us today. So, how are you, Simon?
I'm very well, thank you. It's my father's birthday, who I love very much. So I woke up feeling very happy, dreaming about my parents, my family, my upbringing. And it's my honor and privilege and pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, it's my pleasure, and I haven't introduced you properly, but it feels like you've done so many amazing things, and now I know you're an exercise-based physiotherapist, you're a lecturer, you're a researcher, a microbiologist. I mean, so many things. But for people who aren't familiar with your work, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey, how you came to doing what you're doing today.
Oh, okay, well, a quick history of myself that might be pertinent, perhaps. Look, I was born in Malta, the Mediterranean Sea, and my father was in the British Army, and he was a free diver, and he was the one first introducing me to posture, movement, breathing, mental control, which is my passion all my life. And he taught me how to swim underwater and how to hold my breath. And this was a really amazing introduction to me, because connecting with your breath, and especially not breathing, opposite of what most people think is it's all about learning how to breathe. Actually, fit people don't breathe, and they do a lot of things. And so he taught me that. And soon after that time, I was traveling to Australia when I was 8 years old, and I met an amazing man called Basil Brown, who was a Rhodesian at the time, Olympic athlete. And he taught me what essentially I didn't know at the time, but they were Indian yogic kriyas, special cleansing techniques where you can actually manipulate your internal organs, move your intestines in an incredible way. And technically, they're known as Valsalva maneuvers and Mueller maneuvers, used in cardiac surgery, and very, very powerful ways of changing blood flow within the body, changing pressures within the body, and affecting your physiology and your anatomy in a very positive way if you know what to do. He taught me that when I was 8.
Wow.
And then when I was, it was fun, when I was in my mid-teens, I was shown pictures of Indian yogis, and I was told that this picture was of a man who was doing meditation. He was doing yoga. I thought yoga and meditation were the same thing. But what I saw was a picture of this man dressed just in a dhoti, no shirt, no pants, basically, and sitting naked in the snow. And someone said, this man is meditating. He is doing yoga. And I went, wow, that looks pretty difficult, to be naked in the snow and still be warm. Yeah. And at the time, I also was working at school doing human biology, and they said to me, that the human nervous system consists of two parts: the somatic nervous system, called the conscious nervous system, which you control with your conscious mind, and then the autonomic nervous system, also called automatic nervous system, and it's which you cannot control with your conscious mind. And then in brackets it said, except for Indian yogis who can control the unconscious. And I went, wow, these people control that. So I remember the picture of the guy naked in the snow, able to regulate his blood flow. I thought, wow, that's amazing. And not so long after that, about the time I finished school, 17, I remember I just got my license and I was driving, I met a Tibetan Lama. And it was in Manly in Sydney. He'd left Tibet, been there for 20 years, came to live in Sydney. And he took me on board as a student for a couple of years, and I learned some amazing things off him. The beginnings of Tantra and the understanding of what I realized was real yoga and meditation. Soon after that, I actually went to my first yoga class, and it was not what I expected. It was a bunch of people doing strange postures, and I'm in a funny twist, and I'm going, what's this? This doesn't feel like I could sit naked in the snow. It didn't feel right. Then I heard a whole bunch of people, were doing lots of meditation. And I saw so many people in the early 80s doing meditation. And I'm going, wow, how can so many people have learned this thing, which I think is so difficult? Because, how do you become naked in the snow? And then I realized they're not really meditating. They're just concentrating. They're just observing their thoughts. And mostly they were just sitting, often in an uncomfortable position, getting numb in their legs or sore in their back or sore in their knees. In a very cold room, they'd cover themselves with blankets. And if it was not very exciting, they'd get bored and often stop. And I thought, this is not meditation. This is just sitting in a cold, boring environment, getting cold and bored. And many people stop because of that reason. Some people do it because they think suffering's good for you. And I thought, something's missing here. Something's missing. So then I began an embargation of Japanese yoga, which was linked to Indian yoga. Then I did a teacher training course in the early 80s, and I was asked to teach. I didn't do the teacher training course to actually teach yoga. I did it because my friends were doing it, and it was fun. 3 hours a day with these Japanese guys, who were Japanese policemen in particular, who would have us doing the most outrageous things, like running up and down Hyde Park, hugging the trees, and then, diving into the pool at just near the Circular Quay and swimming underwater. And so I thought this was great.
Cool.
Playing lots of games and things, but we did yoga every day. We did shiatsu and massage. And then right after that, I met up with Shandor Rebate, who was an amazing teacher of mine, who was a special services person in Vietnam, and he became an amazing yoga teacher. And he mentored me for the next 20 years. And he sent me to India. And then in India, in beginning of 1986, I went to study with who's a man who's a legend, really, BKS Iyengar. And I went for the next 13 years. I went, every couple of years to study with BKS Iyengar. And at the time, I also traveled to Mysore, and I learned with K. Patabi Joyce, who was the Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga teacher. And then I also met Sri Deshikachar, who was the son of Krishnamacharya. And those three men were all students of this man, Krishnamacharya, who was probably the person who brought Indian yoga to the West, in many ways, through his three key teachers.
Wow.
And so I learned a lot about this. And after teaching for 10 years, studying at university, I was doing a degree in molecular biology and genetic engineering and stuff like this. And I finished learning about human biology in my first degree. And I was teaching yoga at the same time and thinking, this is great. I feel amazing. I loved India and what it taught me, but something was missing. I noticed that not all my students got better after my classes. Not every injury I had got healed. I had a number of injuries. But still, it was good, but it wasn't perfect. So I thought maybe I need to study more. And I loved university and I loved research. So I went back in my early 30s and the early 90s to do a degree in physiotherapy, exercise-based physiotherapy. Right. And then I really learned how to make a bridge between my Eastern mysticism and understanding from Asian traditional cultures, and also with modern Western science. At the time also, I was living in my early university years in Redfern, in Everleigh Street. At the time, it was the Aboriginal housing estate. So I had the privilege and pleasure of working with a lot of Indigenous people. And they told me a lot of amazing things, which I really resonate with. And this idea of Indigenous understanding, from Indigenous from all over the world, and the idea that we're living in a holistic environment, that everything is connected as one, as opposed to this reductionist world of Western science, which I was learning in my 3 university degrees. I was trying to go, look, both these people seem sensible, both these groups seem sensible. What is a way that I can reconcile the East and the West, or the traditional ideas and the modern scientific ideas? And this became then my quest. And so then after my university degree for physiotherapy, I tried to merge things. And at first it was a bit shaky, and I started to work a little bit too much scientific, and I lost a bit of the yoga. And then I continued to learn, and I got a couple of Chinese teachers, one of whom I still work with today, Zhenhua Yang, who is an amazing man. And before that, I worked with William Chung for a little bit, who was the senior student when Bruce Lee was the junior student of Yip Man. And these were amazing people to work with. And Master Yang, who I still work with, is just a phenomenal human being. And his grandfather is the last of the lineage of the bodyguards of the Emperor of China. So I feel totally blessed to have met incredible teachers from all over the traditional world. And I've been really gifted. I just thank them so much for what they've given me, going right back to my father, and whose birthday it is today. I'm very happy to say that. And also this wonderful teachers I've had from universities like Sydney University, which I studied 3 degrees at. But in the last 10 years, I've had a lecturing position at RMIT University, where I teach things such as applied Eastern anatomy and physiology. And even I teach a subject for the Master of Wellness degree that just recently finished there, but it was a special degree which had subjects in it like positive psychology, energy medicine, and the fundamentals of yoga, which I was teaching as part of this degree course. It became a very popular course for undergraduates to do. And so I've taught at that university, many other universities around the world, including in India at some point. And I've been really blessed to meet these amazing Western scientists who I really thank and have so much appreciation for. And so with all of this wonderful gifting of wisdom I've been given, I'm trying to merge it in my own way, in my own idiosyncratic way, to try and share this with the world. The idea of using things like posture, movement, breathing, mental control to really connect our modern, very unnatural bodies with what we used to have as children, the natural bodies of children, to perhaps begin to restore the possibility of what all people possibly have, which is this possibility of recognizing we're all connected as one, all living in an ocean of love, all connected like a mother is with a child, and recognizing that we as normal people could become back to natural people with the potential of becoming eventually supernatural people.
Wow.
That's what I'd like to do.
Which is a wonderful, thank you for sharing that journey. It's so fascinating how many, I guess, chapters there have been in terms of the Western study, microbiology and physiotherapy, and then been to India, China, Tibet. So you've had so many influences, and you can see how now you're trying to bring those together, and your, I guess, your philosophy or vision of the East and the West working together feels like the right thing. Do you think that's possible? Like in your journey, when you talk to, because it is quite interesting, the holistic, we are all connected, we're all one mindset versus the reductionist, let's kind of drill right down like microbiologist and let's understand it at the tiniest level where you can't see the bigger picture. You know, one's kind of stepping back and seeing a bigger picture. The other is going to get in really deep, and they lose the perspective. But I'd love your views on how these two different philosophies can collaborate, you know, because I agree that if modern science and ancient wisdom could really collaborate and communicate, then, you know, magic could happen in the world.
Yes, I think definitely magic could happen. I think, Lawrence, it's happening already. And when I was in my teens, there was a book published by Fritjof Capra called The DAO of Physics. Right. And I got it, you know, in my teens, but I really resonated with it and read it in my early 20s. And this wonderful book is one of the first of many books written in a similar vein, which had 3 sections. The first section was about modern physics, like hypermodern physics, post-Newton, post-Einstein, and what's going on in that world, and really explaining it. And then the second part of the book is about traditional mysticism and the philosophies of India, China, Tibet, traditional cultures all over the world. And then the third section was about the similarities, the fusion between them. And really, when you recognize what modern physics is saying, many modern physicists have become like mystics of the modern age, because they recognize that really everything is connected beyond the speed of light. Everything is connected at a distance. There is too many things going on in the real world of physics to not appreciate the ultimate truth that we are all connected. Everything is connected, and the ultimate connecting force is consciousness. And what they say in India, of course, is that this is Maya, this is an illusion, that everything is just a manifestation of our consciousness. And the fact that modern physics says this says a lot, because physics at the root is the base of chemistry. Chemistry is the root of biochemistry. Biochemistry is the root of biology, which is the root of medicine. And medicine is at the root of probably all the politics in the world today, and all the social interaction and the psychology and everything else that goes with it. You know, I skipped a few steps. Yes. But really, if they could just listen to each other and go right back to what modern physics says and what traditional wisdom says, the junction is already there. Modern science and traditional wisdom are saying the same thing at their base.
Right. And are there courses and programs that do combine those two? And I think what you're doing, what you're developing, your programs are trying to build that bridge between that modern world, because you can see the value that both bring. Like there's enormous value in modern science. You know, we know stuff that we would never have known 100%. If we didn't have that. And ancient wisdom, it feels like in our and this is my perspective, but it feels that in our I guess journey to becoming more sophisticated, we've lost and left behind things that the indigenous people knew, and it worked, but we've ignored some of those bits, and we need to go back and remind ourselves of what we already knew as a collective.
Yes, well, look, courses like this include the one that has just finished being run at RMIT University called the Masters of Wellness, which has been designed by a very great man. His name is Professor Mark Cohen, who's like 4 doctors in one. He's a professor. He's an incredible genius. And I recommend people to go to Professor Mark Cohen's website. And he organized some amazing things in this university course. And we're thinking of actually starting an extra university course like this. He'll organize that soon, and he said he'd like me to be part of that. As for other places around the world, I believe there are other places. I'm not sure about universities, but there are many people around the world trying to do the same thing that you and I try to do, which is to really recognize that there is this possibility for connection, that science and traditional wisdom can work as one, and that eventually we can get a much better result for our health, happiness, and longevity in this way.
Wow, it's amazing. So where are you based now? So bring us right up to date. So so you're clearly you're clearly based in Australia, although you have a British accent. So I know you were born in Malta, but you spent some time in England in your early.
Some time in England. My father was in the English Army, so we travelled around Europe when I was growing up. I went to 12 schools by the time I was 8, I think, and we lived a lot in Germany, and then northern England, and then near London. But I came here when I was 8. Okay. And I think after 8, you don't lose the accent, although I can speak an Australian accent if I want to a little bit more, But I live now in Byron Bay, which is an absolutely amazing place. It's the easterlymost point in Australia, for those of you who haven't heard of it. But I live just in the hills. It's a beautiful place called Possum Creek. And many people may have heard of Possum Creek because it's the place where right next door to me, like 100 meters away, is the property which was up until recently belonging to Paul Hogan, which everyone around the world knows as Crocodile Dundee. And he was my next door neighbor up until about 6 years ago. And I love and respect this guy immensely for what he'd done for the world. And, so that's where I live, in the hills of the Byron Bay Shire.
So cool. Such an amazing place. And in terms of what you do and how you bring your knowledge, your wisdom to life. So you mentioned training to be a physiotherapist, and yoga and Eastern wisdom and microbiology, and all of those different perspectives, trying to intertwine those together. So where have you got to with that journey in terms of how you teach yoga maybe in a different way, or how you did you practice as a traditional physiotherapist at any point?
Yes, I've worked in hospitals and worked a bit in private practice. But even when I was working in the hospitals or the private practice, to me, what I was imparting to people was not just physiotherapy. It was my total understanding as the person that I am, having had experience in many different types of traditional massage, for example, before I started physiotherapy, in shiatsu and Chinese massage and Chinese acupressure and Swedish and Indonesian massage and Indian therapy massage as well, but also the different exercise forms, and especially exercise-based things, including yoga-based things. So it depends who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to someone who's very resonant with the idea of yoga and traditional mysticism and traditional ideas, I will say, I'm going to give you some good yoga exercises or some really good qigong that might really help you. But not everyone is in that mindset. So if someone is a little bit more reductionist in their approach and more mainstream Western thinking, I'll say, look, I'm an exercise-based physiotherapist. From my understanding as a molecular biologist and a physiotherapist and a physiologist, what you need is this. And if we give you these exercises, this will help restore your anatomy and your physiology to the state you're at. So who am I talking to? But in the end, I teach the same thing.
Same thing.
to
Okay, it's interesting. So it's just around language
yes,
changes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so interesting. And do you run group classes and videos and things like that in terms of sharing your work? How do people connect?
Since the beginning of 2020, I've been pretty much only doing online stuff around the world. In the last few months, I have been teaching a couple of classes in the Byron Bay Shire again, in a place called Body Heals in the Byron Bay Industrial Estate, which I really love doing again because I missed teaching live. I've been teaching on Zoom and everything else. Before that, I was traveling around the world with my partner Jennifer, and we would go to maybe 10 or 12 destinations in a year and teach month-long retreats, where we would give people these intensive trainings for 8 to 10 hours a day, 4 hours of physical practice in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, a couple of hours lectures in the middle of the day. And we would get people getting into what effectively is the flow state or the zone, which I think is akin to the true meditative state, where you're doing something which has 5 features: something which is sustainable, something which is engaging, something which is calming, something which is effortless, yet at the same time, it is invigorating, gives you lots of energy and makes blood flow while the heart rate stays low, your breath rate is low, your nervous system is calm, and it's this state which is like the athlete's zone, where they're running for hours, but you can talk to an athlete who's running and they're not even breathing much. Whereas you and me running next to them would probably be panting. It's funny because in the West, they say you should breathe more, you should get your heart rate up, and actually go. Fit people run fast, hardly breathe at all, keep their heart rate low. Sick people walk slowly, going boom, 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 boom. It's the opposite of what people think. So that's what I've been practicing and teaching around the world, how to get into this state. And so there's many different ways of doing it. And as you and I were discussing before, it's a very individual thing. But I'm trying to sort of develop a system where we can really give something. It's easy to give something to an individual. Teaching one-on-one is a pleasure, it's a privilege, it's very effective, but it's not very effective in terms of how quickly you can spread information. So one of the passions I've had is to be able to have a system which I can give en masse. And one of the last things we did at the end of 2019, before everything shut down in the world in terms of travel, was Jennifer and I were invited to go to the Arava Desert in Israel, right next to the borders between many other countries and a lot of conflict between a lot of things going on. But we had a very beautiful group of people mixed together from all religions, all cultures, all countries, all coming together. And we taught at one point 1,000 people in the desert in one group. And it was this most magical thing. Wow. And the way I try to instruct is I give a few basic instructions, which will make people's bodies enter a particular state with the minimal of instruction, ideally, verbally, and then give the rest of the instruction visually only. And often we'll turn on some music, and just with some simple visual cues, I will oblige people to activate certain muscles and just tell them, relax everything you don't need. And then what happens is this neurological thing. When one muscle turns on, the opposing muscle, via a reflex, has to turn off. Then you have one muscle which is active and compressed, which pushes blood away, and the opposite muscle, lengthened and relaxed, which will pull blood towards it. And so what happens when you move in this active way, where you don't think too much, just move actively, move from your core, breathe from your core, think from your core, which is what I'm teaching, and then just relax your mind and relax your body. You get this really amazing feeling of being able to become strong while staying relaxed, become flexible without feeling strong stretch, because the muscle is relaxing while it's lengthening, as opposed to stimulating a stretch reflex, which creates tension and stretch. And best of all is blood starts to flow without your heart racing, because effectively you turn your whole body into one big pump, one big heart. And so this is what we did. The last time we did it en masse was to 1,000 people in the Arava Desert, and that was absolutely wonderful.
Wow, what an amazing thing. You didn't realize that 2020 was about to change everything. So it's good that you had that experience. Wow. Amazing. So for people who are listening to this and are not able to go on a month-long retreat, which sounds awesome, I can't wait for you to be able to do those again. But for people who who are at home, who are, you know, working at their desks or dealing with a lot of day-to-day stress, as many people are now. Are there simple things that people can do to get closer to that flow state, to make sure that their bodies are being treated well and are supporting them? I'd love you to share any tips or resources that could help people.
Yeah, look, there's lots of really simple things you can do. As a physiotherapist, one of the best axioms that we have as physiotherapists is exercise is optional, movement is essential.
I like that.
And so it's really nice. I really like that. And so the thing is, what you've got to do is just move, but not do what many people think. And many people think, based on their impression from the press, from the media, from what they think is correct, is they lock the core. People will draw their navel to their spine, engage their abdominal muscles, keep a neutral spine, keep their shoulders back and down, stand up straight, always walk like a robot. And what it does is it causes the spine to become very compressed. It causes the internal organs to become very locked, and it causes people's nervous system to enter a state of flight or fight, which means then their organs of reproduction, digestion, and immunity all shut down, become very depressed, and their emotions enter this state of flight or fight, which are fear, anger, aggression, lack of safety, lack of trust for themselves, for the people around them. Not a healthy place to be, and it's unnecessary. So there are simple ways which you can just move certain parts of the body, especially moving from your core, not locking your core, breathing from your core, which the simplest way to do that is to just breathe naturally like you do when you're asleep, and to think from your core, feel from your core, move from your core, act from your core. So I can explain this very simply. I have a very simple system online, which I can share with people. If anyone writes to me, I'm happy to send them some simple exercises. I've got a little program I can send out to people. So it's for beginners, people who don't get off their desk, or for people who do a little bit of exercise, or for elite athletes. Okay. So I can share a bit for any of them, and specifically for the level people want. And I'm happy to give this stuff away. If people go to my website at simonborgolivier.com, just my name .com, there's a whole bunch of free things they can download, and just, I'm happy to send it to them. Or you can write to me directly, Simon at simonborgolivier.com. I also have a lovely website with my wonderful business partner, Bianca Matchless, who is also an exercise-based physiotherapist who traveled many times to learn in India with me. She's probably the best female yoga teacher I've ever met. She's a genius. And her and I have a wonderful company we've had for the last 30 years called Yoga Synergy. So if people like yoga, then we have a very effective system which we've developed with our understanding of Eastern and Western wisdom. And that website is also available to get free classes, and we have on both websites many more complete online courses that people can join, and I'd be very welcome to have people join us. And we also, both those websites have membership sites where people can see classes each week. And on my website, on my simonborgolivier.com one, I answer questions to people every week. I have a 2-hour live session where I answer questions. Sometimes it's fun, and share classes and stuff. So I'm happy to meet with people. Write to me. I've got lots of free stuff. It's fantastic.
Well, wonderful. So one last question from me. So as you look to the future, like with all of your rich experience and the knowledge that you have, which is very deep and unique, and there can't be that many people who have immersed themselves in the East and the West in the way that you have. So that gives you a vantage point, which is which is interesting, and allows you to engage with two different groups of people, like a bridge. So you can connect with scientists, and you can connect with mystics and people who are immersed in indigenous cultures. But what do you think could? I don't want to open a can of worms in asking this question, but as we kind of evolve and change, and everything's very very fluid, what do you think individuals can do that could really help us to find equilibrium as a collective? Because there's a lot of stress going at the moment, and some of that stress is coming from quite rigid viewpoints, and everyone's entitled to their views. But how could, in your experience, what could people do as individuals and as families to really create more equilibrium, more harmony?
Wow. Well, it's a really good question. And thank you for your kind words. I don't think I'm that unique in terms of what I do, but I really appreciate what you said. It's I think that if people are a little bit stuck in their ability to connect with themselves and the world, then just go right back to basic science. And basic science is, as a molecular biologist, as a microbiologist, as you said, what I used to do was take human cells and break them up into individual pieces, put them in a petri dish and watch them. And what you see is that when you grow your cells in a dish, every cell acts like it's got a mind of its own. And this is what science tells us, that every cell of the body has a mind of its own. Every cell has its own consciousness. And this is special. Mr. Iyengar said to us once that yoga is when every cell of the body sings the song of the soul, which is really nice. But what I see as a molecular biologist was that every cell has its own consciousness. And what we experience as our individual consciousness is that it's actually a group consciousness. It's like a swarm of bees or a swarm of birds or a school of fish, all working together as one. And so perfect health in our own bodies is when every cell of our body treats every other cell of the body the same way a mother treats a child who she knows she's connected with. And so, you know, when you see this beautiful thing of I've been honored and blessed to help give birth to my two children and also give birth to many children in India as well. I used to work in a hospital in India. And it's the most amazing feeling of seeing a baby come out of a mother who suffers a lot to do this often, not always, but then you put the baby in the mother's arms and she just loves it so totally unconditionally. And she knows that this baby is not just a separate individual. She knows that baby is part of her. She knows the baby and her are one. And everyone's had a mother. Some people know them less, some people know them more, but everyone has to realize that a mother and child are always connected. But doesn't that mean we're connected to everyone else? Isn't it true that everyone is connected as one family? And so to really recognize that we're all connected as one family, that's the most important thing. But to really recognize it, you have to also act like you're connected. So maybe what we should all be doing is not just recognizing we're connected as one family in this world, not just doing what John Lennon said. Imagine that there was no countries, no religions, no borders, what a world it would be. The world would be so lovely living in peace. But we have to do this in a way where it feels real to us. And the only way people will start behaving like this to other people who they are connected to is to start embodying it within themselves and to recognize that our individual body is actually the sum of 50 trillion cells all trying to work as one. And so what we have to do, in my opinion, is to start making good energy and loving information circulate inside ourselves. And we do that by making healthy blood flow with a low heart rate and a dominance of your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your calming, rest, rejuvenation response. And to do that, we have to engage in this exercises, these simple movements, which give you this flow state. Simple things like rolling your shoulders while relaxing, which actually makes you, that's very simple to do that. Moving, it's gentle, relaxed. It's very, very simple exercises. You can do at your desk. Move your fingers at the same time, move your neck at the same time. And as you start doing this, blood starts to flow. And when you start to connect with yourself by creating a flow of healthy blood flow, good energy, and a calmness in your body, loving information. When you share good energy inside yourself, loving information inside yourself, and you start to make love to yourself, recognizing you must love yourself first, then you have a model for the world. Love yourself first, then share it with the world. Share good energy and loving information with the first person you meet, the second person, the people you love, your family, your partners, the people you work with, the people you don't even know, and just do it to the earth and everyone around you.
That's what you can do. I love it. I love it, Simon. Thank you so much. Let me acknowledge you for the amazing work that you've done and all the lives that you've touched. I mean, how many people would you guess that you've taught or impacted when you look back? I don't know if you've ever done that.
I did actually work it out once about 10 years ago, and it was already around 500,000 people who had been to all my classes over the years, you know, and that was very heartwarming to recognize that. I think many people, once you teach for I've been teaching for 40 years, you know, so it doesn't take that long, I guess.
It accumulates, yeah. Well, and those 500,000 people have got other families, you know, just building on what you were saying. So
yeah, even online stuff makes it even more, I guess, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have one video online that's actually been watched for 500,000 times now, which is really, really nice to see. Actually, it's also shared on Facebook, so maybe it's been shared 1 million times, and that's actually very, very, very special, you know. Sometimes we're all a little bit down on ourselves, and you know, I tend to be a bit self-critical sometimes, and then because today's my father's birthday, and I woke up dreaming about both my parents this morning, which was really touching. I was actually very emotional, and I got in the shower and I thought, I wonder if my parents, who've now both passed, you know, I wonder if they'd be proud of me. And I thought, well, I hope so, but maybe, I hope so. I mean, they love me, they'd always be proud of me, I'm always proud, you know. But you know,
sure.
it's I think in the end, both my parents are the ones who taught me everything. My father taught me how to breathe, my mother taught me how to love, and I thank them both. And I think this is what all parents do to their kids. They teach them this wonderful wisdom, and you know, it's what we should share with everyone. So thank you for this beautiful chance to share this information with
you. It was
you.
wonderful.
I'm humbled. I'm really humbled for all the nice things you said. Yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure. And as I was saying, you know, let me acknowledge you for the huge impact you've had, and thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing just a few things that you've learned over the years. So thank you, Simon. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Love to you all.